Shabbat Shalom. Blessed Sabbath to all of you, and welcome to our last Shabbat of this Hebrew year. Monday night um, brings in Rosh Hashanah, the new year. I'm going to say a few things that are very basic and intermediate and maybe advanced tonight. First of all, I want to remind you that the blessing is Leshana Tova. Israelis here have developed the habit of saying to each other, Chag Sameach. And every time I get a chance, I say, Rosh Hashanah is not a Chag. We have three Chagim. We have the Chag of Pesach, of Passover. We have the Chag of Shavuot. And we have the Chag of Sukkot. The punctilious add that at the end of Sukkot, we have Shmini Atzeret. So we have three, maybe four Chagim. Rosh Hashanah is not a Chag. Why? Because on the Chagim, it's especially a time for great joy. So, for example, for Sukkot, it says, V'haita ach sameach, you will only be happy. So the liturgy around the Chagim is one of great joy. It's a pilgrimage festival. People would, some number of people would actually arise by regal and by foot and go up to Jerusalem and share the bounty of the Lamb. So the rabbi said that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are too solemn to be a chag. That's not the feeling, the experience that they wanted people to cultivate, which is one reason I don't like people saying Happy New Year. I'm not opposed to people being happy, but I remember a long time ago, a person asked me, is it okay to go out to a bar after Rosh Hashanah services? And I was really perplexed by the question. It never even occurred to me what that would mean. I said, it's not, it's a Reform synagogue. I said, it's not that common. And I talked to her, she says, well, why not? I said, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I've never heard of it. And she said, well, isn't it like Happy New Year? I went, okay, got it. Yeah, it's a different Happy New Year. So happy is for Sukkot. We say Chag Sameach, a joyous holiday. So if you can, remember to say Shana Tova, a year of goodness, or Le Shana Tova, which is a brief form of the complete blessing, which is Le Shana Tova Tikatevu. May you be inscribed for a good year. So I want you to think about that for a moment. You see somebody, and again, you don't have to agree with this liturgy, but you might find it helpful. The liturgy of Rosh Hashanah day and Yom Kippur day, has a prayer called Unatan Tokef. Let us ascribe Tokef, power, to this day. And the power of the day is that the divine reads through the Sefer, the book in which all of our deeds, thoughts, etc., are recorded. According to the myth, I don't like it. It's some are so bad that God says, okay, we already know what's going to happen to you. Some by fire, some by water, but that's you. There's another group that are so good that they're sealed in the book of life. And there's a bunch of people in the middle that says, okay, make your case. And the divine says, I'll decide finally on Yom Kippur. So who's going to be so sure that they're in the book of life? So everybody gets to work. Now, I look at that, and there's a few problems I have with it. And that is people who, some by fire, some by water, are we going to assume that they sinned so horribly that the divine sentenced them to death? I cannot tell you how troubling and actually theologically offensive that is, that people suffer and people die because of their deeds, which means that some people don't suffer and die in the year because their deeds are holy, because they've committed no sin. Now, I know righteous people suffer and die before their time, and I know that wicked people sometimes don't suffer and live long lives. So the whole theology that our lives are determined by our deeds, I reject. So now the question is, why keep the theater? Why keep the metaphor? And that's why we really do have to look at this courtroom scene. And by the way, I recommend that everybody find a high holiday prayer book and read it through, if only for the theater and the poetry. It's not looking for you to theologically agree with what you read, but rather look at it as poetry. The poetry of the Unatana Tokef is very powerful. And says, let's give Tokef, let's give power to this day. And the poetry wants you to have the feeling that you're in court And your Sefer Zichronot, your book of memories is, we can say this now, we couldn't say this 30 years ago, is up on the screen. And God and the angels are watching. And you're groveling and you're looking at your feet and you're looking at your hands. And the divine says, look at the screen. That's you. Your signature is on every single page. And you can say, I didn't think there was a camera on. And God says, this closed circuit cameras, yeah, this has been going on since the beginning of time. So we had a camera following you everywhere. We had recording everywhere. Um, Everybody was already Twittering and Instagramming before, long before there was electricity. God, it's all recorded. And I'm riffing on modern metaphors. And there is a kind of a counsel culture, meaning I will counsel your life. If you've been too horrible in the first, we need to get you out of here. So now I don't believe it to be true, but if there were a movie about a court scene, a very deep court scene, like Groundhog Day, where he couldn't get his life right, he was a constantly inauthentic human being, Bill Murray, that he kept having the same day over and over again. He's trying to figure out to himself, well, what am I doing wrong? And with the audience know, he's living a false narrative. He has these little things that he does where we say, man, you're being false. You're playing something old here. And as the movie progresses, Groundhog Day, he suddenly is a man of authenticity. He's bringing his whole spirit, he's bringing his whole moral code to bear. He knows when he's being false. You can see the chagrin on his face, and at the end of the movie, he wakes up and it's the next day. So that is. By the way, there was a time when many synagogues ran Groundhog Day during the high holidays. That sense that what you do determines your year. I don't believe it theologically, but I find it a poetically profound idea. So that's a very basic. So when you say Le Shana Tikatevu, what you're saying is, may you be inscribed in the book of life. Let's take the metaphor side. You look at another person and you realize there's so much arbitrariness, there's so much randomness in our lives. We don't know what the future holds. And you might look at another human being and just say, I really hope it goes well for you. I really hope your year goes well. We're all struggling in public and in secret, even secret from ourselves. And to look at a person and say, Shana Tova or Lishana Tova, which is the more correct, with with the literati, you can say Lishana Tikatevu for the, may you be inscribed for a good year. After Rosh Hashanah, on our way to Yom Kippur, we add a word. I'm not saying you should do this. I just want you to know. It says, Lishana Tova Tikatevu Vatechatemu. Now, so what it says is, the writing happens on Rosh Hashanah, and the Chatima, the final divine edict, happens on Yom Kippur. It's a Chatum. It's set, sealed, signed, sealed, and delivered. So Rosh Hashanah, Leshana Tova Tikatevu, Yom Kippur. Assuming you didn't make it in the first drafts, you have 10 days to work this out. Leshana Tikatevu Vatechatemu. I haven't heard anybody say that. No one says, Rabbi Binley, Lishana Tova Tikatevu Vatechatemu. I think I've probably lost interest by that pine already halfway around the block. But when people say to me, Leshana Tova, I know the second part is, may you be inscribed for a good year. Um, y'all know that I had a triple bypass back in February that I did not see coming the previous Rosh Hashanah in the high holidays of 2022. That was a surprise to me. Y'all know that I had a terrible back injury this year that was doubtful that I would ever walk again. I didn't see that coming. But one thing this practice has done for me is I look at that list of horrible deaths and I say to me, this could be my year. This could be my year. And I've had more life than I expected to have. I've had more goodness than I've expected to have. Maybe I've used up my space and my time, need to make way for the next generation. But this liturgy develops a kind of a stoic attitude. I don't think whatever happens is because of my sins, but I think anything can happen. So it reminds me to live in such a way, as this poem so beautifully says, hold it close. You don't know what's going to happen today. You don't know what's going to happen this year. You might not have all the time in the world. So one of the themes of Rosh Hashanah, and that's why I love this poem, hold everything dear, the things you wouldn't even look at. You look around, from my daily walks and the people and places that I go, I really try to have this consciousness of ingesting everything and engraving memories and holding everything dear, especially at this time, because our calendar has put in this idea of a Rosh Hashanah. So remember, it's not only Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, but the Hasidim see it as Rosh HaHishtanut. They take the word Shana, put it into a different verb form, and they make it into the beginning of transformation. I call it the re-beginning of transformation. And that is, as we go into the year, we don't, we ought not, certainly don't have to, and we ought not live it exactly like we lived it last year. I think we can all look at times when our emotions became too strong, when we hurt other people, or we depressed and hurt ourselves in ways that we could have gotten control of. We didn't live enough moments as being filled with the sacred and filled with potential. We fall back down to old habits. We fall back down to old ruts. It's a time of a lot of contemplation of the past year. And the month of Elul, the past month for me, has been very, very deep. Um, I think one reason is I've had the opportunity. So that's one reason why we're not doing big high holidays this year. Um, those of you who have ever produced anything, I think maybe if Gwen is here, she can tell you all about that. It's exhausting. It takes everything out of you, putting the sound system together and putting the liturgy together and rehearsing. I was thinking to myself, since my first high holidays in 1981 at the Irvine Jewish community, I don't think I've ever had high holidays. I've been so focused in preparation and getting everything right and hoping that I'm interesting and finding teaching, and then afterwards it's just collapse. Just the adrenaline rush ends and you're supine, and then you do it on Yom Kippur, which is the whole time, and then basically lie flat for another few days, and then you try to get enough energy to have Sukkot, and then after that, this year when we finished that period, we really were supine for about a month because the last year has been a very demanding year for us, and we thought to ourselves, I thought to myself for sure, I'm going to kill myself again. I'm going to find myself on a hospital bed, and they say you work too hard. All the stress is creating cortisol, and the cortisol is filling your arteries with schmutz, and it's clocking out the blood, and you're going to die. Or you can live life differently. So I thought to myself, I'll take number two. I said before you, life and death, blessing and curse. I don't know which one should I take. Life, death, blessing, curse. It's so confusing. I'll take life and blessing. So one thing we decided for ourselves is we have to treat ourselves well. So one motivation in doing something much more simple without demanding that Avigal, poor girl, go through all these rehearsals and Mirav, for everything that she's working on, that just keep it super simple from the heart to the heart. We will have the shofar sounded on Rosh Hashanah. We will have a few pieces of simple music, not the choral pieces. We will have the mourner's Kaddish at the end, but mainly it will be my teaching again at a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level, and to go on this journey. Now, when you do sign up for the webinar, you can listen to it anytime. You can go, to your local synagogue for Rosh Hashanah Eve, and then come home and listen to the webinar the next morning. So, for an expected period of time, it's once you sign up for it, it's yours. Don't have to wait for us to remember to send it to you. That's the advantage of the webinar. We haven't tried webinars before, so we're going to try it and see how it works. If it doesn't work, or we learned a lesson. If it does work, we may keep that going for the holidays. All right, that's what we're doing. Mostly why we're doing it. A more practical reason is when we were doing Friday night and Saturday morning Los Angeles time and the full high holidays, we were effectively working half time. And from the money that we raised, the community cannot afford us halftime. We just have to realize we're not being engaged halftime. There's maybe interest, but there certainly wasn't the willingness to support us as halftime people. So we wanted to reduce our compensation, align with what people were willing to donate, which is, we're closer. We still have to raise a considerable amount. And it also was for us. We said, wow, this idea of stopping every Shabbos day and coming back and doing another big production, our quality of life has deeply changed. And again, we are so excited for the next several years, but we also have to rest more. We have to take our health into consideration, and we want you to do this. Maybe some of you are uh, know how to live balanced lives, balancing work with introspection and lots of fun. Well, we didn't. We we worked way too much, way too hard. We carried way too much stress, and we didn't think we had a choice. And Abigail says, "You always have a choice." I said, "Yeah, we have choices, but there are consequences to choices too, and we weren't willing to face consequences." Well, now we really do have a choice. So we are consciously working on both fulfilling our duty to the orator community and self-care on all kinds of levels. And we've made lots of decisions on how to remake our lives going into the future. And we simply want to share this with you. So if you're wondering, should I do it? Can I do it? We're going to say, do it as much as you can. And it's stunning when you say, I can't, how many people say, okay. And they just don't. I'll share with you an anecdote. Um, I used to be in very big demand for for scholar in residence kinds of things, and I was getting strung out. I was like, every one Saturday night in Orange County, Ventura County, Hermosa Beach, and the money was okay, but more they said, Rabbi Finley, the appeal to ego, by the way, for young rabbis. You're amazing. There's nobody like you. We have to have you. Only you. I said, Mirav, what do you think? She says, well, they sound like they really like you and really need you, and it's only you. I said, okay. And I'd drive, I'd come home wiped out. And so I said, I have to start saying no. This saying yes is going to kill me. She says, okay, start saying no. So they said, no, you have to. I said, actually, I have to take care of myself. Well, you're the only one. I said, before I came, there was others, and after I'm gone, there'll be others. She said, okay, thank you, bye. I went, wow, like they didn't break down into a puddle of tears. I just said no, and they finished. I said, yeah, I think they can do without me. So I began to learn that I actually could say no. And I want to say that to you. You may be saying things, could be in your home, could be at work, could be with other places, where your desire to fulfill your duty, your desire to receive the approval of other people, your desire to see yourself, for others to see you as a good person, is actually running you down, is wiping you out. There's a nice saying that says your Yetzer Tov, your drive to the good, can be more destructive than your Yetzer Ra, the drive toward destructiveness. Many people are driven to ruin by their drive to do the good. They exhaust themselves, they string themselves out, they build up the stress. Stress turns into cortisol, does terrible things to your body. And you wake up one day and you say, well, now that I'm gone, well, actually, when you have your final sleep and you're looking down from the clouds, you say, well, now that I'm gone, and actually people got along quite well without me. So I think I'm going to start to rethink my life. So the first thing I want to say, and also part of our sharing with you a bit of our personal experience and our personal journey, is self-care comes first. And along with the poem, the care of the people, what I call covenantal relationships. This usually includes spouses, parents, children, but sometimes not. Sometimes people get estranged and so forth, and people bring people that are not biological family, and they become their covenantal partners. There may be some of you. This has happened to me when I'm with someone that I feel is a covenantal person, although not a biological sibling. One person said to me and a fellow, "Well, are you related? Are you family?" We looked together and said, "Yeah, in a way, we're actually, you know, unusually connected and synced." So sometimes, we have the good fortune that our covenantal partners, first of all, are life partners, and maybe your parents, maybe not, maybe your children, maybe not, maybe your siblings and cousins, maybe not. But hopefully, we all cultivate in our life our covenantal partners, either the family we're born with or the family that we create. The family we create is indeed, those can be covenantal partners. What's a covenantal partner? Um, Theoretically, minimally, a person who will escort you to your death. When you tell them you're dying, they'll say, I want to help you out of here. And they'll come to the hospital, they'll come to the hospice, and they'll be one of the people who help you transition to the next place. I've seen so much, and I think about myself, and I think to myself, so aside from my wife and kids, who's going to do that for me? Because I've seen incredible things as a rabbi, watching people come together for a person feeling terrified, a bit lost and forlorn, and people gather around them. One reason we're so happy about the gathering that the Guths and JoJo cultivated, because from what I heard is those those were covenantal relationships that, because of COVID and so much loss. I mean, people said we've got to continue this. So I'm sure there'll be more. If um, be in touch, look out. We'll be happy to advertise everything that they do, and we understand it was an incredibly fun and deep experience. So self-care, covenantal relationships. Sometimes it won't be our biological family, but it can be others. But you have to put the time into it. So if you're not able to put the time into developing and deepening covenantal relationships, either marriage, biological, or other covenantal relationships that have to be created intentionally, well, we have to give it time. And one thing is we can become too busy. You know, this is the confessions of a busy parent. We can become too busy fulfilling outside obligations to fulfilling our core obligation to our, what I'm going to call our covenantal partners. So, Shana Tova Tikatevu, be inscribed for a good year. Rosh Hashtanut, the beginning of transformation. This can be a time for us to evaluate where we put our time, where we put our energy, and however well or not well you did it last year, you can do better this year. I want to take that thought to a deeper level, and this is a lot of what I've been working on as I try to plumb deeper and deeper. I want to share with you a bit of my process. When I sit, I don't meditate as in go into an alpha state and disconnect from my consciousness. I do more of what's called hitbonenut in Hebrew, which lahavin means to understand. Lihitbonen means to turn understanding upon yourself, and it's a deep introspective process of self-knowledge and transformation. So the minimum goes something like this. I arise into in spirit. I call the ascent part neshama or spirit. I call the descent nefesh. I talked about that on my spiritual preparation for Rosh Hashanah, which is now, if I'm not mistaken, online. We got a good recording, good sound, good film, and I believe it was available in the email. I want to thank everybody who's registered and come. So in any case, I ascend and I go to, first of all, the observer mind. I want to observe how my inner life is operating, my negative ego states, my positive ego states, and just see how it's all operating. My objective mind is the world of affects, how I connect to the world, the so-called object relations. Um, uh, is the world objectively how I see it to be? So, for example, a very common thing is a person says, I was very hurt and wronged by another person. Well, the feeling is a fact. The feeling of hurt and wrong is factual, but it might not be connected to a fact. So I say to a person, how, like, it sounds terrible, but do you know that's what happened? They go, absolutely, there's no two sides of the story. That sets up a red flag for me. I said, of course, there are two sides to the story. You need to talk to them. People are very uncomfortable. Feels very awkward, and that's why we have a formula. May I have a few moments of your time? Sure. I recall we had an unpleasant uh, uh, um, verbal transaction and an unpleasant moment. Yeah, I remember that too. Um, I want to share with you what I recall. You have to say, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I know I remember with my emotions, but I just want to share with you what I remember, and then I'd like you to share with me what you remember. Some people don't like this the first time they hear it, but you got to change the culture of relationship so you can do this. And then you share police report style. No emotions, no feelings, no metaphors, just what you recall happening to the best of your ability. And you've already done incredibly deep work to get a very sparse police report out. Why? If you start using metaphors, things like, I felt like a doormat, I feel like you don't see me, it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, I still have people saying to me, what's the problem? One person says, I don't feel connected. I say, I'm not seeing that. So, okay, thank you. I don't feel seen. I said, I'm still not finding out what happened. It takes a lot of people to get past what I call big word metaphors down into what exactly happened. So here you are carrying anger, resentment, and hurt and frustration. And you come to the other person and say, here's what I recall happening. They say, well, I really thank you for sharing, but I don't think that's what happened because I have a distinct different memory. And you're thoughtful and patient enough to say, so I'd love to hear it if you could also describe it in rather sparse manner and not hurtful metaphors. They might say, okay, yeah, that was pretty good what you did. I'll do the same thing. And you realize you're living, in the same house in two different planets. Well, what do you do? Well, that takes a lot of work. People say, we have such different experience of the world. What do we do? I said, there is a way. And one is when things happen, you lock it in. And you nowadays you can text. You can say, I just want to confirm that you said this and I said this. Or you can end a conversation and say, look, we have to come back to that, but I'm leaving with this memory. Like you hit we used to call the hard return. I guess it would be save to disk as soon as you can. And even a few times. I just want to, we're in this conversation, but I just want to confirm that this is where we're ending the conversation. You say it like 4 or 5 times. So there's no possibility, or there's very unlikely the other person can say, that's not what I said. That never happened. What you're actually doing when you do that is you're giving the other person the opportunity to say, I just did say that. I'd like to take it back. And you say, everybody gets a rewind, right? You want to take it back, you want to rephrase it, that's great. So when you realize you live on two different planets, and then you decide we have to make things much more recallable when we do talk, and then you cultivate these practices to, as it were, make moments part of the record, then you're reviewing what you said. Sometimes people will say, well, that's actually not what you said. You said something different. You go, wow, I did say that. Or you hold them to account. And so therefore, closer to real time, people can say, uh, I exaggerated my emotions. I did say that. I see that as hurtful. So in our family, we say, can I get a rewind? Or can I rephrase that? So things get better just by preparing yourself for the interpersonal so-called police report. Things start to improve right there. So remember, if you're hurt, if you're wronged, and I'll talk about more of this on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The first thing is assume you are remembering with your emotions, meaning the so-called right brain, and not the archival rational left brain. Okay, so the right brain is drama, you're writing a drama, and the left brain is the archive. So part of what you're doing when you do this practice is you're moving out of the drama brain, I was so wronged, to the archive brain, I wonder what exactly happened. Okay. Now, once you reach there, I'll talk in more detail on Rosh Hashanah, maybe in a recording on what to do there. But I want all of you, as we release our things and go to a new year, um, avoid as much as possible unnecessary suffering. And our greatest unnecessary suffering is anger, disappointment at how others are disappointing us. Our hurts, disappointments, anger are typically about other people or about ourselves. We're angry at ourselves. And our feelings of anger, disappointment, and hurt at others and at ourselves are usually disproportionate with reality. But we have the objective mind. Observer mind, I'm really angry at hurt, disappointed, or at myself. That's the observer mind. The objective mind is it connected to reality? Meaning, are my feelings, emotions proportional to reality? Well, how do you check that? I call that the objective mind. This is beginner stuff for most of you. Some new people, it might be brand new, but this is the foundations of wisdom work that I've been teaching for the last 15 years. But it doesn't get old, I'll tell you that. Um, and then once you say, well, there's my feelings, which is my internal world. It's a fact that I feel this way, but my feelings might not be connected to facts. Then you consciously have to engage your objective mind and be on the search. Are my thoughts, feelings, and emotions connected to an objective world as much as we can determine such a thing? It's complex, but it's doable. And then you realize yourself, I live on two different planes. There's a factual world that I'm going through, and then there's the internal world of how I interpret it. Now think about that. The factual world is somewhat set. The internal world is the narrative you say about the factual world. Your narrative is up to you. Your narrative is up to you. The quality of your life is more in your narrative than in what happens. Now, I can guarantee this to be true. I've gone through some adversity in my certainly the physical adversity of long COVID and a triple bypass and you know severe spinal damage and all kinds of things. And but I focus so much on my inner narrative that people say, well, you have seem to have a kind of pretty good disposition for a guy who almost died. I said, I've been preparing for this day since I was a teenager. So like, the whole thing is I just regret I've wasted so much time, in negative feelings that were unnecessary. I'm not feeling scared to death. I'm feeling regret that I didn't live life better. So I, came out of the operating table. Okay, that was a close one. So remember, it's your narrative that creates your life, not the things that happened. You say, I have this horrible life because what this person did. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes people act so egregiously that it really did knock you down, knock you out. All right, it happened. There you are, laying flat on your back. All right, what's next? Is your narrative, I will stay down and beaten? Or is your narrative, I will get up and I will strengthen myself and I'm going to continue with life? It is a fact that people unfairly, unjustly beat us down. That's factual. What happens next is up to you. And, we all grieve. It might take a month, it might take 2 months. I mean, it's really hard for some people. They say, God, I'm so hurt. I'm so frustrated. I'm so disappointed. I'm not getting better. And I check and say, you got a little bit better. Okay. We have a long way to go, but you got a centimeter better. And it's like, you know, rehab for spinal surgery. The rehab for me was 4 months. I just got the permission to go back and train. He says, you're not done. It's going to take a year, but you have permission to go and start working out again as long as you're super careful. So, and when I was going through the spinal injury, I thought, wow, what a great metaphor for wisdom works and for inner work. I mean, there's this injury, and you overcome it incrementally. It doesn't happen in a moment. Marriages are repaired incrementally, overcoming estrangement with parents and children, getting through life. You don't have this one magical conversation and everything changes. You say to yourself, well, here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. That's called transformation. Here are the skills that I need. And it's going to be incremental. And then you have to have, kind of milestones evaluation of, is it indeed getting better? Remember, you've got to give 100%. They've got to give 100%. So 100% and 100% in the strange math of relationships equals 100%. You got to give it 100% and not say, well, I'll give 50%. That is an entry ticket to hell. If you ever say, I will give my 50% for this relationship, you've got to give it 100% of your integrity, of your spirit, of your moral sensibility, of your empathy, and you do your 100%. It might inspire the other person to try to come up with their 100%, and things can get better. So as we go into the new year, one of my commitments is I don't want to go through the emotional ruts that I've gone through in the past. I'm done. It's time. So I go to my observer mind, my objective mind, my rational mind, meaning my theories about the world, including other people. Are they not only are they correct, because different theories can account for pieces of evidence, but it is the best theory to create a flourishing life. Okay? And that's very important. A person can do these things. I say, well, that's an evidence that they're a bad person. Or I can say, a person did these things, and that's evidence they were in a bad place. If they're a bad person, I would do this. If they're in a bad place, yeah, I was hurt, but maybe I can help. So facts can 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 substantiate different narratives and different theories. What's the best theory? The theory that creates the most human flourishing. So once I go through objective mind, observer mind, objective mind, rational mind, truth mind, remember truth mind for me is something like the truth of the human condition, reality. And one reality is, the people that you know and love, they are they're trudging through their life in their way toward their death. And what they don't need is some judgmental person on the outside hectoring them to be more likable for you. You're not the center of the world. I'm not the center of the world. So I might say, well, I don't like what they're doing. I say, well, I'm not the center of the world. And maybe they're doing what actually they have to go through to get to the next point in their life as they reach their inevitable end. And it's not about me. So when I get to the truth mind, it sounds kind of sad, but part of what the truth mind contains is integrating your hurt, your disappointment, your loneliness, a lot of negative stuff, and your capacity to work it through into a kind of a philosophic position. So you go from hurt and angry to sad. You sit in sadness. Sadness is a truth. It's called holy sadness. Like, this is the human condition. This is the reality of my life. I can resent, I can be angry, or I can just, first of all, accept reality, which is always a good thing, and say, well, now that I'm here, I will try to make the best of things. Um, one man described to me, not too inaccurately, he says, my marriage feels like a prison. And he described it, and it was, unfortunately, I said, well, there's a prison yard. Have you ever considered planting a garden in prison? He goes, Rabbi Finley, I want to get out of prison. I said, you can Shawshank your way out. It's not going to happen tomorrow. In the meantime, I suggest you ask the warden, if you can plant a little garden in the prison and tend to your garden every day and not look at the prison walls. I said, yeah, it sounds like you're in prison, but all you do is look at prison walls. And I gave the person a metaphor of the garden in the prison. And many of us live in a predetermined life, and we're going to be defined by things that we don't want there. You can look at the walls and the barbed wire, or you can plant a garden. So I hope that metaphor is useful to you, that you can't oftentimes change the circumstances of your life, but you can change how you experience the circumstances of your life using the metaphor of what I would call the garden in the prison. Now, that's a choice. So when I go up to the truth mind, there's tough stuff. I've accepted it. I've assimilated. I'm really sad. Well, here I am. And now the wisdom to live redemptively, the wisdom to say, no, this being reality, this being how things are. Again, I'm going back to this beautiful poem. How can I create beauty here? There's so much beauty to be created if I can stop fixating on the wall and start fixating and focusing on my garden. And then suddenly you realize all I have is a garden. And your garden was your Shawshank. I don't live in a prison because I'm a gardener. So, I'm piling on metaphors, but I got to tell you, this word world work really works, because once I get up into the truth mind and above, then I sink down. I look at my day-to-day consciousness, my flow of consciousness, and I go under that to my various ego states, negative and positive. And, visiting your ego states that you know about takes a lot of work. You got to spend a lot of time there. Then you go under that to what I would call the world of value. When I connect to the world of value, my question is, I have a world of value underneath my ego states. My negative ego states act contrary to my world of value. My positive ego states are more connected. Up here in my conscious world, my ego states can be running the show, and therefore I might live a life, certainly my inner life, contrary to my values. Well, that's another kind of hell. So when I go into the world of value, there's a sense where I look up and I can see my ego state, and I can see my consciously lived life, and I'm in the world of value, and there's almost like a plea. I want to live, including regulating my inner life according to my values, a values driven life. Well, you can write about it, you can talk about it. Doing it, for me, is a profound inner life exercise of drilling down under your ego states to your world of value, looking up and then making a conscious decision. I will try to make every conscious moment in line with my values. It takes a lot of work. You have to reevaluate your values. Some values might not be livable. You might be reaching too far, but it's a very, very important practice. The last thing I want to say on this little guided meditation is, under the world of values is the world of soul. Soul is where meaning and purpose is created. Soul is where our sense of self comes into being. And sometimes you go down there and we realize we have a damaged sense of self. When I teach my classes, parenting the soul of the child, and I'm teaching the class again soon. One thing I ask parents is, what is your child's sense of self? Are they lovable? Are they a success? Because the parent who only focused on, do you have homework? Did you get good grades? And the child will say, didn't do their homework, doesn't have good grades. Their sense of self is failure. I'm a failure and I'm a disappointment, reaffirmed every day. Or the parent who says, so how do you feel today? How do you feel with your teacher? How do you feel with your friends? And you go through it and say, look, the most important thing is that you be, you know, quote from the class, that you manage risk, that you're safe, that you're moral, that you're insightful, that you're respectful. Those are what I'm worried about. Grades are grades, you'll figure it out. But I care about the quality of your life, depending on the age, but you got to say it over and over again. I care about your inner life. Let the school take care of the school. You need some help, happy to get you some help. I'm happy to help you. I say to parents, but don't make that their life because people don't know it actually can create a damaged sense of self. And where did I used to meet those people? In rehab. I met them in rehab. They had such damaged sense of self, and it's almost the exact same story every time. My parents saw me as a producer of value, not a person of value. That I produce value with grades, etc., but I didn't have inherent value unless I was producing value. It hurt so much that they medicated, drugs and alcohol, end up in rehab. And part of our job was you are a person of value way before you produce value. And that was our work. Well, that's the same with you. You go down into your soul and you have a sense of yourself and your value as a human being, as a child of God, and you rest down there. And then there's what I call the ascending. So there's the descending down to the soul. It might take half an hour to get there. Again, I'm not chanting, I might do a little chanting biblical verse to get there, but I sit there very quietly, very silently, and I arrive there. It's a wondrous thing, by the way. You go through, mishkanim, cathedrals. The inner life is highly populated with beauty and images, and it's an extraordinary journey when you get down into the world of the soul. I mean, sometimes it's a river, and sometimes it's a beach, and sometimes it's a beautiful building. And you sit in there, and then you look up and say, okay, now I want to align my values with my soul. I want to align my unconscious ego self with my values. I want to guide my conscious life with all of that. And then you can go back up into the observer mind, objective mind, rational mind, truth mind, go back down, come back up. So there are days when I've sat and I look at the clock. I said, well, I think I've been in here for 2 hours doing this. I'm not like just meditating. I'm doing like, wow, I'm journeying. I come out of that pretty exhausted. And I've been doing it through the month of Elul. And I cannot dis adequately describe how completely transformative it is. Just so completely transformative. I've shared with May Robin the girls what I'm going through, and I think we're all doing it in our own way, and I was saying, I'm so proud of you that like looking at each other. Oh my God, like it's your inner world, your secret, but on the outside, we see you doing the work. So it's something that you know you can share with other people that you're doing. You can share some insights here and there. It is ultimately your deep work. All right, so in our Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, I wanted to put a focus on um, your um, ability to transform, the importance of covenantal relationships, which means how you spend your time, the importance of self-care. I want to report out to you. If I could live my past differently, I think I did good self-care, but I could have done a lot better. I certainly could have been more present to my loved ones. I think I made some bad choices and mistakes that I will be repairing the rest of my life. Um, I have not spent enough time. I spent some time, but not enough time in this restorative repair work. Well, now I am in the years that I have left. And I'm going into this new year pretty excited. I mean, pretty excited that there are like new vistas, there are new meadows and mountains and streams and brooks. In a, maybe I'll go to some actually outside really people go to the Golan and swim in a river or something. But the inner life is so rich and so verdant and so filled with beauty that I find myself just looking forward to another year of more deep reflection and focused transformation than at any time in my life. Therefore, for high holidays, all the work that we would have to put into in a service and rehearsals and music and all that, it takes us away from this work. So we thought I basically said this year we're going to root into the self. We'll present what comes out in a simple and beautiful way. Next year we might go back to something else, but this year we're going to have our own as a family really deep Rosh Hashanah. We want to serve our community, but first of all, we want to be authentic in our religious and spiritual lives. All right, that's my teaching for tonight.